I want to start today with a concept that feels almost dystopian, like almost sci-fi. But sociologists tell us it's actually our current reality. It's called the data double. Welcome to the deep dive. I'm your host, and I'm joined by our resident expert.
Hey everyone, glad to be here. And yeah, the data double, or the digital twin.
Right. It's this idea that between your credit card history, your GPS location, your search queries, and your biometrics, there is a version of you existing in the cloud that is arguably more accurate than the version of yourself you present to your
Oh,
friends.
absolutely. The algorithms know what you want to buy before you do.
Yeah.
They know when you're depressed based on your scrolling speed. It's wild.
It is. It's terrifying,
It
honestly.
is. It's the ultimate transparency paradox of the 21st century.
Yeah.
We've never been more tracked in human history. I mean, we are watched by everyone, corporations, governments, followers online.
Hmm.
And yet, if you look at the sociological data, we are in the midst of a catastrophic loneliness epidemic.
So we are watched but not seen.
Precisely. We're monitored but not known. And that distinction between surveillant and being truly known, that is the engine driving the source material we are breaking down today. We're looking at Psalm 139.
Now, for anyone listening and thinking, wait, is this a theology lecture? Hang on.
Right, stick with us.
We are treating this as a piece of ancient literature that tackles the crisis of identity. This is arguably one of the most intimate, vulnerable texts ever written. It's attributed to David. And our mission today is to, well, strip away the stained glass vibe.
Exactly.
We want to look at the raw data it presents about human psychology, identity, purpose, and that deep human need for connection. We're pulling from the verses of the psalm itself and a breakdown of its modern applications.
And while the language is beautifully poetic, the implications we'll discuss are incredibly practical. It really answers that universal question, am I truly seen? It's a text that moves from the feeling of being almost cornered to the feeling of being comforted, and then, and we will definitely get to this, it takes a very weird, aggressive turn before the end.
It definitely goes off the rails a bit in the third act, but let's start with the premise. The deep dive opens with a statement of fact that sets the stage for everything else. Verse 1. O Lord, thou hast searched me and known me.
Searched and known. In the original Hebrew, that word for known, it's yada, is heavy. It's not just intellectual data collection.
Right. It's not a file on a desk.
No, it implies a deep, relational, almost commingled intimacy. It's the difference between recognizing a face in a crowd and knowing a spouse of 50 years.
It's intensely personal.
Deeply. And notice the order there. Searched, then known. It implies an active investigation.
And the text immediately starts breaking down the granularity of this investigation. It says, Thou knowest my downsitting and my uprising. Thou understandest my thought afar off.
That thought afar off is the killer.
That's the one that stopped me when I was reading the source notes. It's the idea of latency.
Explain that for the listener.
Well, usually I have a thought, I process it, I curate it, and then I speak it.
Right.
There's a lag time where I can edit myself to look better. The text is saying God bypasses the edit button. He knows the thought while it's still afar off, before it's even fully formed in my own head.
It completely destroys the performance aspect of our lives. We spend so much social energy performing, trying to present a specific image to the world.
Yes.
This text says there is a witness who sees the raw footage. Verse 4 doubles down on this. It says, For there is not a word in my tongue, but lo, O Lord, thou knowest it altogether.
Before I even speak, it's known.
Think about the implications of that for a second. How many times do you bite your tongue? How many times do you say, I'm fine, when you are entirely devastated? Or you compliment someone you actually despise?
Constant micro-lies. We do it just to keep the peace.
Right. And David is realizing that those social masks don't work here. He says in verse 5, Thou hast beset me behind and before, and laid thine hand upon me.
Now, I have to be honest. Beset feels claustrophobic to a modern reader. It sounds like a military siege, like you've surrounded me and I can't escape.
It can be read that way, sure. The Hebrew word zar can mean to besiege or confine, but in this context, paired with laid thine hand upon me, the source material suggests it's fiercely protective.
So it's not a trap.
No, it's a hedge. It's the idea of total nearness. There is no gap between the believer and the divine.
And David's reaction isn't, hooray, I'm loved. It's actually, whoa, this is way too much. Verse 6, such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is high, I cannot attain unto it.
It's cognitive overload. If we really sit with the idea, truly try to internalize it, that there is no secret corner of our mind, no fragmentation between who we are in the dark and who we appear to be privately, it's overwhelming.
It really is.
It's too high. We can't grasp it. because we have no human equivalent for that level of intimacy. Even our spouses don't know us that well.
You know, it effectively cures imposter syndrome, doesn't it?
How do you mean?
Well, you can't be an imposter if the audience already knows everything. You can't fake it till you make it with a being who knows your thoughts before you even think them.
Exactly. It forces you into a state of authenticity, whether you want to be there or not. And that leads David into this next section, which is this wild spatial exploration of where this presence actually exists.
The no off the map section.
Right, he starts running hypothetical scenarios. Whither shall I go from thy spirit? Or whither shall I flee from thy presence?
He maps it out on a grid. First, the vertical axis, verse 8. If I ascend up into heaven, thou art there. If I make my bed in hell, behold, thou art there.
We need to define terms here quickly because hell in this context isn't the Dante's Inferno, fire and brimstone concept modern listeners might imagine. The word is Sheol.
Which is the grave, right? The underworld.
Exactly. It's the place of the dead, the depths, the lowest possible point. So heaven represents the pinnacle of success, glory, and light. Sheol is the depth of depression, failure, isolation, and shame.
So he's saying, you are in my biggest win, and you are in my most catastrophic failure.
Correct. Spiritually speaking, there is nowhere a person can go where this presence is absent. You cannot fail your way out of this presence, and you can't succeed your way out of needing it. It's remarkably stabilizing.
Then he does the horizontal axis. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea.
That's a massive geographical sweep. Wings of the morning is the dawn, the east, the uttermost parts of the sea for an ancient Israelite. That's the Mediterranean, the west.
The furthest distance imaginable.
Right, from the farthest east to the farthest west.
Even there shall thy hand lead me, and thy right hand shall hold me. It's relentless. But then he hits the visual that I think resonates most with our modern sensibilities. The darkness.
Verses 11 and 12.
If I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, even the night shall be light about me. And he concludes with this mind-bending line. The darkness and the light are both alike to thee.
This is profound physics and profound theology wrapped together. We use darkness to hide. Darkness is where we put our shame, our secrets, the things we don't want on the public profile. David realizes that darkness is merely a subjective human experience. It doesn't actually exist for God.
It's like saying God has night vision goggles, but infinitely better.
Much better. It's saying that to God, it's always high noon. You are fully illuminated at all times.
Which brings us back to that tension. Is this terrifying or liberating? Because if you are listening to this and you're trying to hide something, that is a terrifying concept.
The source material argues it's liberating. Because if the darkness is already light to him, then the energy you are spending trying to hide your mess is wasted energy. You are already seen. And crucially, verse 10 said, thy right hand shall hold me. He sees the darkness, and he doesn't recoil. He holds.
That's the key pivot. It's not, I see you and I'm disgusted. It's, I see you and I've got you.
Right. And that confidence comes from the next segment. The reason he doesn't recoil is that he isn't just an observer. He's the creator. You don't recoil at the machinery you designed. You understand why it operates that way.
This is the intentional design section. Verse 13, for thou hast possessed my reins. Thou hast covered me in my mother's womb.
Quick technical note here. Reins literally refers to the kidneys. In ancient Near Eastern poetry, the kidneys were what the heart is to us today, the seat of emotion, the innermost self. So he owns the emotional hardware.
And then the physical hardware. Verse 14 is the famous one. I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made.
We hear that on greeting cards all the time, but the Hebrew concept for wonderfully made implies being distinguished or set apart.
Yeah.
And then he uses this fascinating phrase, curiously wrought in the lowest parts of the earth.
Curiously wrought. It sounds industrial, like metalwork.
It's actually textile terminology. It refers to embroidery, variegated threads woven together to create a highly complex pattern. It's the absolute opposite of mass production.
So it's bespoke.
It's a custom one-of-one design. And the lowest parts of the earth is a poetic metaphor for the womb, emphasizing the mystery and hiddenness of being made in secret.
I love the notes here on ancient wisdom regarding design. Because if this is true, if you are embroidered by a divine artist, then self-hatred becomes a direct critique of the artist, doesn't it?
That is a heavy realization. The sources explicitly state that self-hatred contradicts divine craftsmanship. If you believe this text, you have to accept that your specific mix of personality, body type, and ability was a deliberate choice.
Yeah.
It wasn't a biological accident. Life is not random. It grants an immense amount of dignity to every single human life.
And then we get to the book metaphor, verse 16. In thy book all my members were written, which in continuance were fashioned when as yet there was none of them.
This is the architect's blueprint.
Yeah.
Before day one of your life occurred, the concept of you was already fully documented. It speaks to purpose. You aren't just drifting, you were written down.
Okay, so we are floating on this cloud of affirmation. We are known, we are held, we are beautifully designed. And then we hit verse 19.
The twist. The car crash.
It really is. It's like the needle just scratches across the record. David suddenly says, "Surely thou wilt slay the wicked, O God. Depart from me, therefore, you bloody men." And he goes on to say, "I hate them with perfect hatred. I count them mine enemies."
It is incredibly jarring.
Jarring. It sounds like he needs immediate anger management. We just spent 18 verses talking about how intimate and loving God is, and now David is screaming about slaying people. What is happening here?
We have to resist the urge to edit this out to make it more palatable, because this is where the text gets real. The source calls this loyalty to righteousness.
Explain that, because it feels out of left field.
David isn't just having a temper tantrum. He is drawing a definitive battle line. You have to remember, in the ancient mindset, if you are in a covenant with the king, in this case, God, the king's enemies are your enemies. You cannot be intimately aligned with the king and also hang out with the rebels.
So it's fundamentally about integrity.
It's about alignment. He looked at the world, sees bloody men, people who exploit, who mock God, who destroy that beautiful embroidery of life we just talked about. And he says, I am on the other side. If they are against you, they are against me.
So he's aligning his public actions with his private spiritual experience. He's saying you can't have this deep, cozy, God knows me relationship and then live a life that condones wickedness. Integrity matters.
Exactly. It's a visceral reaction to the holiness he just described. He's looking at the brokenness of the world and utterly rejecting it. But, and this is the most critical part of this entire deep dive look at where he lands right after this.
Right, he doesn't stay in the anger.
He doesn't. He looks outward at the wicked, feels this surge of perfect hatred, and then in the very next breath, he realizes something. Wait, if God knows everything about them, he knows me too.
That brings us to the vulnerable conclusion, verses 23 and 24. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts, and see if there be any wicked way in me.
This is the ultimate pivot. From arrogance to humility. It's easy to point at the wicked out there. It's terrifying to ask God to look for the wickedness in here.
And he uses the exact same word from verse 1, right? Search me.
Yes, but the dynamic is completely flipped. In verse 1, it was a statement of fact. You have searched me. It was happening to him. Now in verse 23, it is an invitation. Please search me.
That is a massive shift in maturity. It's the difference between being audited by the IRS and hiring an auditor because you genuinely want to get your books clean.
That's a fantastic analogy. Real growth requires this invitation for examination.
Yeah.
He's saying, I've judged the world, but now I need you to judge me. Find my blind spots.
Wow.
The text says wicked way, but it can also be translated as way of pain or idol. He's asking God to root out anything that is damaging his soul.
And the goal isn't just to be clean and static. The goal is movement. And lead me in the way everlasting.
Right. He doesn't just want to be analyzed. He wants to be led. He recognizes that he cannot navigate life on his own. He needs that right hand from verse 10 to actually pull him forward.
So bringing this all together for the listener, because we really want to land this plane in a practical way. We've covered omniscience, omnipresence, the intentional design in the womb, the flash of justice, and the final surrender. What is the takeaway? Why does this matter to someone driving to work today?
This goes right back to where we started, combating isolation.
The data double versus real intimacy.
We live in a hyper-connected but emotionally disconnected culture. We are drowning in data but starving to be known. Psalm 139 offers the ultimate antidote. The argument here is, you are not overlooked, you are not a cosmic accident. In a world where we curate everything to get likes or public approval, this text says you are already fully viewed, fully known, and immensely valued.
It redefines solitude completely.
It really does. If you believe this text, you are never actually alone. Solitude isn't emptiness, it's just privacy with God.
And there's a stability factor, too. The notes mentioned stability and uncertainty.
Think about how fragile our modern identities are. If your identity is tied to your job, what happens if you get laid off? If your identity is tied to a relationship, what happens if it fails?
You're completely crumble.
But if your identity is anchored in being known by God, in being fearfully and wonderfully made, that is a floor that does not drop out. It's an anchor point that exists outside of the economy, outside of your relationship status, outside of algorithms or applause.
Your worth is not determined by algorithms or applause. I love that. But the challenge here is the integrity piece in private, because the night shineth as the day.
That's the scary part for our ego.
Yeah.
It means character is who you are when the door is locked and the phone is off. If we really believe Psalm 139, there is no such thing as a secret sin or a private habit. It calls us to live fully integrated lives, to be the exact same person in the dark as we are in the light.
And when we inevitably fail at that, because we're human, we have that final prayer, search me, that emotional maturity to stop being defensive.
That's the tool. Instead of getting defensive when life gets hard or when we are criticized, we can adopt David's posture. We can say, okay, open the books, show me what I'm missing, and lead me.
It's the ultimate move of vulnerability.
And vulnerability is the only actual pathway to connection. You cannot be loved if you are not known.
That was the core message of this entire deep dive. You are seen, you are known, and you are intentionally formed. You cannot be loved if you are not known. So I want to leave you, the listener, with a specific provocation to chew on today, something to explore on your own.
Let's hear it.
We all have parts of our lives we keep in the dark, things we think would make us unlovable or unacceptable if they were truly seen. But if this text is true, those things are already fully seen, and you are still held. So do you truly believe you are fully known and still loved, or are you still trying to hide parts of yourself emotionally?
That is the real question. How will you apply this information in your life?
Stop trying to manage the PR campaign of your soul. The source material suggests there is a much better way to live.
A way that is everlasting.
If you want to dive deeper into this, or maybe you want to see the breakdown of the Hebrew words we mentioned today, we have put together a full resource pack. We invite you to support the show and grab those insights by joining our mailing list at https://ceasepracticaladvice.
We've got some really practical tools on there on how to actually pray that search me prayer without, completely freaking out.
Highly recommended. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today. Remember, you're not just a data point. You are known.
See you next time.